Hello, everybody. I'm Ingrid Arotoma. I'm a Quechua Peruvian born in the Amazon rainforest, the central Amazon rainforest. I'm a last year PhD student, hopefully. And my research is focused on understanding the changes in indigenous food systems in the Amazons due to different drivers, including climate change.
Hi everyone, I'm Mel Flynn, pronouns she, her. I'm a settler, currently living in Toronto, which is part of Dish with One Spoon territory. And I'm also a final year PhD student based in the Sustainability Research Institute and the Priestley International Centre for Climate at Leeds University. And I work in Nunatsiavut, the Inuit region of the east coast of Labrador. And I work there with the government of the region on participatory scenario planning for food security policy. Okay, so how have you engaged in co-production in your PhDs and why? My answer to how I got engaged in co-production is a pretty simple answer, really. The Inuit region where I work described that that's how they want to be involved in research. They want co-production. They want to have sovereignty over the data. They want to have control over research priorities in the region. So going into the PhD, I knew whatever the research subject was going to end up being, it was going to be co-produced, and that was going to be the starting point of any conversations that I ended up having with people was, okay, what are you interested in doing? Here's a bunch of my skills. Any of those appeal? Like, what do you have going on right now that I could help with and work alongside you with? And that was kind of the starting point, was always going to be, what can we do together to get somewhere? Which is interesting, I think, considering like how a PhD usually works.
Yes.
I think having it where the first thing you do is set out that somebody else is going to be in charge is kind of intimidating and terrifying, but also so cool. And a really like important step for research and where it might be going next.
Yes, definitely. I think like I've been involved in other projects and I'm always like, what's the benefit, the real benefit of the people? It's not just to participate. It's not just a compensation you are giving. It needs to be more because actually I feel like we are earning so much, like earning and learning from them, that it needs to be like in the two ways. They also need to win on participating in this research, and I feel like there is more room to grow in research here.
Definitely. And I think that's a really like important point that I think sometimes it's forgotten in this process, is that actually it's about collaboration and learning and working together jointly on something. But I think the interesting thing is the different like how you can have participation across different scales. And I think that's a really important like distinction to make, that participation doesn't just happen at one level, it can happen at lots of different levels, depending on what makes the most sense for what it is that you're looking at.
And I think especially because like we're working with indigenous peoples that have other worldviews, right? Other system of knowledge. Because I'm coming from this like very Western institution, like they know a lot of things that I don't know. And it's the respect that you have to work with these people. It's like you need to be open to learn and to acknowledge that there is different type of knowledge is there. You need to be humble when you want to do participatory research. And you need to respect people, like the others, not as just participants, but as also agents or like collaborators, right? Like they're working with you in something. So maybe moving to our next questions, that what has been your role, or what is the role of the researcher in this approach?
I think some of my like key skills as a PhD student are that I have this like focused time and energy to spend on one project. I'm not split off on lots of projects. And my job is to do this one thing and do it in a very focused way for 3 years. So in moments where things have maybe slowed down a little bit, I can add to the momentum, you know, and say, okay, well, I'm coming up for this trip in July, so I'm going to start pulling things together and Something else that I think we're really good at as PhD students is sort of deep reading and thinking time. We have a lot of time to do those things. And then finally, I'm an evaluator and a reflector. So that's probably one of my key roles, is reminding us to collect feedback on those things and to think about what we learn about how we did things this time and how we could do them better next time and how we can improve on things.
I'm thinking about my role, for example. It's quite different because these are an indigenous organization and funding from the government. It's different here. They don't have any type of power, like economic power there. So, and they need that. Like they might not be able to meet if you cannot afford to give back the transport fee that they are paying, because they need that money, right? They are giving time, but they don't have money to give. So I feel that in my case, I am a logistic provider for them. I'm like, with my research, I was able to support them in some way that they needed from me. For example, it's not only my workshops that, of course, were a safe space where they could interact with each other and learn from each other. So among their other issues, they were having like this extra space to meet, and of course I was covering the cost of that. But also when they find other funding, for example, NGOs or any other type of organizations that wants to promote of them to meet, they were also asking me to go, because I have a computer, I could like take pictures. I was like supporting the creation of maybe new skills in them. And right now it's like I go whenever I can to their meetings. It's not very like, it doesn't happen every week. Of course, I don't have much funding for that, but I'm very happy that, for example, there are other girls that are now like doing videos or like taking all the professional pictures for them to be to have more presence in social media, so they could attract more funding and more other organizations that wants to work with them, because that's what they need. And I feel that in a way, if that's what I can provide, that's good and that's enough. So I feel more like an enabler, something like that. So I feel like I could maybe help them in a bit in connecting. And like my research has helped them to have more presence in social media. So that's huge for them. They are attracting more other organizations to work with them in other maybe more important issues that they want to address, like their presence politically or like feminism in indigenous communities.
My challenge and my opportunity are the same thing, I think. It's trying to be anti-colonial in your actions whilst working in an institution that has its origins in colonial systems. Like, there are lots of things that in creating the type of PhD that I've ended up doing have been difficult conversations to have with the University of Leeds, particularly things about data ownership, ethics, and what ethics looks like in working with an Indigenous community. There's been a lot of kind of need to push back on what is seen as the norm at a UK university in terms of what is ethical. But at the same time, like, that's kind of cool. Like, it's been difficult and a lot of work to have a lot of those conversations. But if we're not having the conversations within our, colonial institutions, if we're not challenging that as researchers, how do we ever shift the narrative? So that's why it's the opportunity at the same time. It's challenging and difficult to work in those kind of quite oppressive structures sometimes, but also I hope I'm coming through and kicking some doors in on the way.
Definitely. We're opening a space, I think. Like, we need to push further the research into that, especially in social science, right? Like, we are doing... We are connecting with people, and that's the most important thing. It's people you're treating there, so you need to be respectful to do that. So, what has been your experience as an early career researcher at Leeds engaging with these approaches?
So I wrote three things down. I wrote frustrating, creative, and uncomfortable. And I think frustrating because of some of the like things that I've discussed. Like there's still a lot of structural racism present, and it makes being able to do what is seen as ethical and respectful research and the type of research that I want to be associated with difficult at times. There's a lot of red tape to go through, and a lot of that red tape is racist and sexist. So it's been frustrating, but it's forced me to be able to get creative in how I word things, in how the kind of research happens, and what is considered research, you know. Going out on the land to be able to do a workshop out on the land where a lot of that connection is about just meeting other people and chatting, not talking about research questions and data collection per se, is a really like exciting space to be in, and I feel really grateful and lucky to be there, but also uncomfortable as a settler coming from a UK university. There's a lot of reflection that has to happen. There's a lot of mistakes that I make frequently. That I'm lucky that I have meaningful relationships with people that I work with where they can call me out on things, but it never feels good to be called out and told off for doing things wrong. And so that's been an uncomfortable but a massive space of learning and growth for me as well, alongside doing the PhD.
That's great. I think for me, challenging is also like my experience because we're in the School of Earth and Environment, right? So I remember chatting with another lady the other day, and she was like, "How is your experience? Like, you are coming from a very sciencey school," and it's like, that's right. It's very like strict, and many times when I was like giving a talk or like sharing what my research is and what am I doing, there were people like saying, "Where is that like the science here?" or like, "Where is the hard data here?" It's like, what? I'm just like, what? I'm not sure. So I think it's been challenging in that sense, that for being able to to stand up and say, this is really important what I'm doing, and it's like you wouldn't be able to understand or to make change no matter how many models you have without me. I'm the one giving you what people is thinking. I'm the one like, you need to listen to me. It's not the other way. You need more people like me. So I think it has been challenging in that way, but it's also like, yes, a bit difficult to come back here. Like, even though I'm working in my own region, like I was born here and the communities live like 1 hour from here and everything, I still have to say the university Leeds in England. I still need to say that I have all these degrees, and it's I'm not them. I'm not similar to them. I'm a completely different like person, and of course they see me as different as well, even though I'm not a settler, even though it's all this like background I have for the education I have, that it makes me different. It makes me in a different power position also. So I need to I'm trying to deal with that. I'm trying to say, hey, like, it's still me. I'm still here. Like, come on, guys, don't take me off. So it's challenging, I think, for me. That's my word, challenging.
Also, I think learning to take a step back completely from that and not even bring your own way of knowing to like a discussion, and just sit there quietly and let people talk about what they know without you sharing what you know, is something that takes a lot of like practice. I'm finding it's very difficult to keep your mouth shut when you're taught throughout your academic career that you should like take part in the discussion. Sometimes, no, you need to just be quiet and listen. Acknowledging the value of all the other things that goes on behind research. Yeah, okay, we got to create our publications. We have to eventually have some kind of thing we can present as a PhD. But really, I think in my experience, that's not the important part of the work that I do. It's often sitting at the meetings and sitting at the workshops and, you know, providing a space for people to chat and providing a space for them to meet other people that are interested in these issues or working on the same things. There's more to life than academic impact.
Yes, yes. Well, this is it from us. Thank you so much for listening.